And now, a look at this week in podcasting news. It's the Jag Show Podcast.
Welcome in, I am John Jag. You may have noticed it's been a while since I've come up with a new episode of this podcast, and for that I apologize. I've often talked about Podfade in this show. It's when after a certain number of episodes, a podcast falls down your priority list. Well, I gotta be honest, it happened to me. Today I'm gonna tell you how it happened and what I'm doing about it. See, my wife and I are doing a lot of traveling this year. Call it pent-up wanderlust from COVID, scratching an itch, whatever. Well, as a small business owner, you're never really fully on vacation. So I'd work a lot of long nights and weekends prior to and just after a trip. And I thought I had a plan for this podcast. I'd created some bonus content and I'd planned on releasing it weekly. Well, that worked in April, but as we turned the calendar to May and June and now soon July, the work kept piling up, and the further I got away from creating new content, the less of a priority it became. Now, don't get me wrong, I have some amazing podcast clients, and the influx of new business is certainly a good thing. It just wasn't a good thing for this podcast. So I made a decision, and I'm pausing the Jag Show for the summer, to perhaps retool it even. Summertime often sees a dip in podcast listening because people's habits change for trips, being out of routine with school and work, and more. So if you do need a break, this is the time to take one. But as for my podcast, here's what I'd like to know from you. What about this show have you liked and disliked? Do you prefer more of podcast industry news or practical tips for your podcast, or a combination? I'd really like your feedback as I think about what season 4 of the Jag Show is going to look like. So let me know on social at Jag in Detroit, or you can always drop me an email, jag@jagindetroit.com. I really want to use your feedback into retooling the podcast. One thing I highly recommend for you if you're taking a break, learn a lesson from me. Tell your listeners if you're taking some time off. It wasn't until a colleague asked me the other day, "Hey, what's up with your podcast?" that I realized I owed you an explanation. By the way, thank you for that, Stacy. So by my telling you that this show is going to be back in the fall, that's me making a commitment to it. And that'll help hold me accountable. I'd recommend the same for you if you're taking a break. Now, I may put out some bonus content between now and then, but I will be back with new episodes of the Jag Show in the fall. Just let me know what you want to hear in the show. If you have pod-faded and your podcast has fallen off your priority list, don't beat yourself up over it. It happens to all of us. But have a deadline to reschedule your show, let your listeners know when that's going to be, and figure out if you want to make any tweaks. And as always, if you need help with your podcast, that's what I'm here for. So until we meet again, stay healthy and stay safe. Later.
Thanks for listening to the Jag Show Podcast. For help with your podcast, find Jag on the web at jagindetroit.com.